This episode of Artists I Love features the great Impressionist Claude Monet. In honor of Monet, we will be doing a little master study on Lady with a Parasol. Counterclockwise, our palette we'll be using will be yellow ochre, ivory black, burnt umber, burnt sienna, cadmium yellow, light cadmium yellow, medium cadmium orange, cadmium red not shown, ultramarine blue, alizarin crimson, cobalt blue, cerulean blue, viridian, sap green, and titanium white. So we begin by mapping this out, and before I do so, I'm going to switch to a technical aspect that some may be interested in to show you how I'm mapping this from my reference photo. To skip past this, just forward to 533. Let's take a look at what I used as a reference. This is the file here, and what I'm going to show you is how to make this image that I have open in Photoshop the same size as my panel. I have my rulers open, and right now it's like 23 by 30, somewhere in that neighborhood. And I'm just going to go to image size, and make the width 16. But with this lock on, and that's real close to 20. And with this lock on, it adjusts it proportionately. Hit OK. Now we're really close to 16 by 20. With the magnifier on down here, I'll go up to fit screen, and that's what we have. Now, this image is now the exact same size as our panel. But we need to make it view at 16 by 20. This we can magnify this, but we don't know what point. So what I did is I would take a measuring tape and say it's 9, and I just keep experimenting with it. So let me show you up here. Under Windows, notice that I have the navigator, the checkbox near navigator turned on. That is this little window right here. And you see right now it's at 170.79. Through trial and error, I came to the conclusion that it was 308. I just kept, and let me show you what I did. I just went in here. I would use this slider to go up and then measure it. You know, that's 11. Just go up to 33, near 12, and I just kept doing this until I pinned it down to. So here, you notice I highlight this box here, and then I'd go to 308. Again, I came to that conclusion by adjustments. Enter. All right, now it is truly as close as possible. 16. Hope you can see that. 16 by 20. So when you saw me in the video taking measurements, what I would do is say, like, the tip of this umbrella, I would just come over here, grab the edge, and I wasn't being super careful, but there's the edge of that. Make a mark, grab it here. So in other words, we're grabbing this and this. Now there are, if you know anything about Photoshop, there are some guides here that you can pull over, and that's exactly what I did. There to help. They're nice to help. So you could say, like, so in other words, like in the field that I'm in, I'm a mapper. Say that's a GPS point, and that may mark a significant point. So you grab this point, you grab that point, you grab this point, you grab this point, this point, this point, and then next thing you know, you're just connecting the dots. And that's sort of how this progressed. But I wanted to show you how that you can use this to measure by. And for those of you, this may be elementary, and I understand, but there's some of us that are a little behind technically, so when it comes to the computer and things, but this is a nice aid. Okay, so here we go, and I start with those spots that I showed you how I'm picking up on landmarks and just getting measurements. My panel is 16 by 20, as we spoke of earlier, and much smaller than the original painting by Monet. And here you'll see, and there's a little bit of glare off of the wet paint that I'm using, but that goes away on into the video. My apologies. Hang with it. And this is a painting that you may want to paint along with, and you'll see that it's not that difficult. You know, obviously we're not Claude Monet, but we can turn out something similar and explore some impressionistic techniques. The video I did earlier on broken collar created some interest on this, the color aspects of Impressionism, and in all honesty, I don't know a lot about it. I've been discovering it myself. I never was a huge fan of Impressionists, but I have gained much more interest and respect as I grow as an artist in their use of color. It's very useful in adding it to your arsenal of in your tool bag of creating anything. But here, so you'll see, look how dark the face is here, and you'll notice later on when I get tones. Now this is a dirty purple, if you might want to say, and that's what the dress looks like, her outfit. And look how these tones look dark. I made a mistake here. I'm pretty sure Monet probably used a toned canvas, like a warm tone. So just a quick look up close at Monet's original, and I didn't notice this till after we got into the painting, but notice on the left here, it looks like the surface peeking through. That looks like a warm gray to me, and we'd have been better off to start that way. And of course, another good reason to use that toned surface is because look how dark this dress looks here, and you'll notice later on in the painting where it's not that dark. So if we would have started off with, say, a middle tone, which I believe that Monet did, these values would look different. And notice her face, look how dark. I'll have eventually down into the painting, I'll have to darken it a little more, because keep in mind that this is backlit, and the sun is sort of behind her overhead, and she's pretty much a silhouette. And here I'm just showing more instances of me mapping this thing, getting some measuring the original and getting some points of reference, and not being overly careful, because in this case I'm just really wanting to get an excuse to talk about Impressionism, and this is not. I've not been super careful. Every time I finish one of these, I wished I would have taken a little bit more care. But you know, like this painting, it took maybe less than 2 hours because we just moved through it, and but it was really fun to do. And after, I mean, I learned several things just in this little study. And I've seen this painting many times, but when you do a master study like this, it forces you to take a closer look, and things that you thought you knew about it become changes your mind. You're like, nah, because just like the toned canvas, I didn't notice that till after we got into it. And another thing that I hate to admit, but it's like the Impressionists, I never thought that much of their drawing abilities, but this is drawn very well. I think Monet's only maybe in his mid-30s. I think this is his wife and maybe his son. I know it's her son. But he's looking up at them like on a little knoll. But notice how, if you'll notice, like in the boy, notice the hat and everything. It's as if you're looking up into the hat. And the same with her. You're looking up at her, and he is consistent with the way her garment wraps around her. You'll notice when we move into the sheer parts of her veil or whatever that is over her face, the way it wraps around and the angle that it's at, it is consistent with the angle that the viewer is at. Notice even like the parasol, you're looking under the parasol, because I've seen just simple mistakes like that in the drawing, but these are not. This is drawn very well and consistently so. Here I'm going to go ahead and start with the sky. This is a mixture of alizarin and ultramarine and some cerulean with white. And it's I may have used a touch of viridian just to gray it a tad. I've seen copies. People do copies of this painting, and they'll paint the sky with a little bit, probably too much of, say, like Theo or something, Theo blue, and it's a tad on the garish side. Not so in the original. It's he uses some like broken collar. I guess that's the term you would use, or at least optical mixing up here in the sky, where this bluish gray starts. And I've just started with the same tone all over, and I'm going to adjust the tone because we must have a gradation from the top to the bottom, so you see the sky recede. And he does that Monet does that very well. And yet it's not just a flat blue in the sky. So as I start working this tone in here, then we'll alter it later. So I'm just moving all over, trying to get some color onto the board. And again, if we'd have toned this, it wouldn't have been as much of an issue. But again, this is what we learn. And just getting some stuff around the little guy there. And you'll notice now at the top, I'm going ahead and start in with a darker mixture, pretty much the same thing. That is just alizarin and ultramarine, and maybe some cerulean in there. But I noticed, like in the original Monet, it's like he doesn't cover that. He goes over that, but he doesn't cover it. He lets some of that bottom peek through. So this really gives a variation in the sky, and it's much more interesting than looking at just a flat blue sky. And it's pretty consistent. If you stare up into, and this here I'm just showing you, I thought it was anyhow, that's ultramarine and alizarin, and there's a bit of a gray mixture of that blue, and I think I popped that in there too. But again, we have to be darker at the top, and it recedes or the gradation of the colors go down as the sky recedes. And a lot at this point, I'm just trying to get some color on the board. I don't know how long it took Monet to do this painting. It was actually 39 3/8 by 31 7/8. That's good size. That's pretty good size. I'm much smaller. Here I'm putting some viridian into that mixture. Here's where we talk about some broken color, but you could see that in in the original there was some green in the sky. Okay, so just to take a quick look at the original, look up in the left-hand corner. You'll see that green, and you'll see it against the warm. There's some warm values in there, and that green creates a harmony with the parasol. But notice the green and the warm, how the fluctuation of those tones. This is the broken color issue. It's creating such an interest and such a vibrancy. Okay, so then I'm just picking up. I'm trialing the color on with palette knife and getting plenty of paint on the board. As you notice now that I'm down near the young man, of course here I'm creating like that sky issue, and I'm showing you how I'm taking some cadmium yellow and mixing it in with that blue and red. In other words, the yellow with the purple makes a gray. And again, I don't know that Monet used this, but this is where I'm using them silvery clouds. And just going through and getting some paint on that board. But trying to get those marks, the shapes of those clouds that are very interesting. This is something we need to pay attention to in our mark making. Is not clunky shapes, but interesting shapes. Here you'll see, again, I'm just getting some paint on some variation in the clouds with some different temperatures there. That's a little warm, but you notice that down at the bottom they're receding. Now you'll see me make a motion here, like see that rounding look. When this is what's making this composition beautiful and read so nicely. Is like the shape of those clouds is like rounded, just like you're in a barrel. But when you're looking up, and it's consistent again with the angle. And as we're looking up into the sky, we're looking up at the subject, but in doing so, we're seeing the sky and the clouds. We're not looking out at the clouds, we're looking kind of up into the clouds. And those clouds are receding toward the horizon, and they are grayer as they go back and down. The ones around her are lighter. Of course, we'll get into that. But just getting some of those shapes in, and again, using the palette knife. I don't know that he used that. Then I'll take a mixture here, like I've added some. This is yellow ochre into that cloud mixture. So we're getting some variation in the into those white clouds that are swirling around her at the top. Did Monet use the palette knife here? I have no idea. I just did so. Now I've bent it towards pink. I had a little bit of cadmium red, and just popping that in there and getting it on the board, getting it around her, around the young man. Now we're going into her garment. And notice it's kind of the same color as the sky as you would think it would be, because I think she's wearing a white garment, and a lot of what you see in this, and of course she's backlit again, so you're going to see pretty much reflections of everything, of all of her surroundings reflected into this garment. Now what I'm doing here is getting that swirl, that her dress would have. It's probably a little bit of a windy day, and she's moving, and this suggests movement. And if you know anything about when you're drawing and you're looking for the movement in the figure, this is very helpful. Now down around the bottom of her garment, you will notice it's brown or darker, as it would be. This lady's walking through the woods with a white dress on. I mean, you can only imagine the dirt being picked up, or maybe the green from the grasses. You know, wear a white pair of tennis shoes out in the grass, and you'll see how it changes. But and also it's a bit of a reflection from the grasses up into the underside of the garment and into her garment, and all of this creates a harmony within the painting. And there's a lot of variations here in tone, and so I start off by getting this grayish blue, and then I don't take it that far, but you could just work all kinds of stuff into this. As you notice there, notice how I got a little bit of a warm tone up around. Well, that might be some warmth coming from her face, or where her clothes are clinging a little closer to her skin. Now I'm taking that out of the arm there. I'm trying to get the position of that arm right. Notice that yellow, and I don't get enough of that in here, but you'll notice in the original there's a bit of a lot of gold right there, where there's some yellow flowers below her, which I believe are reflecting up into her arm, or what he's trying to show as reflecting up into her arm and onto her garment. And I just keep building this up, and trying to get the right value is really a challenge. But what I like about a backlit subject like this is, like I say, they're actually just really silhouettes, and then to be able to get to outline them, as the light wraps around them. And I notice I go back to the face, and remember what looked like was too dark, but now it's too light. Once we get all of the other surrounding values in, her face wasn't nearly dark enough. It's probably shown a little darker in this video because the contrast in the what stuff I'm using is it's way too contrasty. Here we're working on the Parasol, which is just Viridian, I think some Cobalt, a little bit of alizarin. The alizarin and the Viridian are, red and green. It's helped graying it down. And there's a lot of variations in the original on this Parasol that you could work on that. You could put in a lot of stuff to make that interesting. I kind of run through it, but there's more that we can do, and because this whole concept is new to me, and I'm finding that it can be time consuming to add all of the variations of collar when you're doing broken collar, and I'm sure it's one of those, it's like everything else, the more you would do it, the quicker you become at it. And of course, my problem is having a little bit of a attention deficit disorder. I'll start on something, and instead of just continuing with that, I'll see something else and jump to that when I should have kept all of my attention on the one spot. But like here, just trying to get that, trying to get the umbrella or parasol in shadow as the light is kind of shining through it, but basically getting that shape and related to around her face. And I don't know why I felt like it was important for me to include that I had to take the easel clamp, back it off, and work on the top of the umbrella. I fussed with her face a little bit, but I didn't spend a lot of time on that. I just made her even more of a silhouette than he had it. Monet painted her face in, but he wasn't overly detailed about it either. And same with the boy. It's not important in my opinion in what we're looking at here, because we're just wanting to see. We're just wanting an excuse to go over these impressionistic aspects of the painting, which to me are far more interesting than anything else about it. in their use of color. And again, down near the horizon line, going with a lighter blue and a variation. Still not obliterating what was behind it, but just mixing it in. And here, putting a little bit more of a saturated blue into that dress. So you assume that the skies, it's catching some of that color of the sky. And now I'm getting the young man blocked in, getting some of that same blue on him. The composition in this piece to me is just as interesting as any of the collar aspects. It's almost like a backward L shape with, and the way you look up into it and the clouds swirl around her. And the clouds, then he uses the collar or the values to really put emphasis on her because she's dark. She's like, again, like a silhouette, and then the clouds wrap around her, and the clouds are lightest around her, giving her all of the contrast. So here you'll see like the grasses that are in shadow. We've just got muted mauves and blues and green, and then the grasses that are catching a little bit more light, they're just hotter. I think I used a little bit of sap green in there, and then I'm firing in some whites, some off-whites, and some yellows, and where the light is catching those yellow flowers around. Now up here around her veil, notice, and I didn't do this as nice as he did, but that veil that's going around her face is, again, it's the way it wraps around her face, and really consistent with all of the angles that make it look like you're looking up at her. I had to tone down some of those clouds that were off to the left there because they were competing with the ones. And notice how they recede. They go down from her, from under the umbrella on down. Still measuring, always measuring, just trying to get something into his. We're not spending a lot of time with him. Just getting in some little bit of definition on him. Not necessary for what we're doing. We're just not trying to make an exact copy, but notice, see how that goes around her face? It's just very consistent, very drawn very nicely. And that's another. So this is the finished piece, and I tried to back off some of the contrast so you could get an idea how it turned out. Not bad for a couple hours work, and again, if I did it over, I would change a lot of stuff. A lot of stuff I learned, and if you do this, you will too. I encourage you to give it a try. It's these techniques will really be handy for doing, especially like plein air work, where time is of the essence, and also in the studio when you're needing to loosen up and use this broken color technique. Okay, so just to recap on some techniques that we used today, and taking another stab at broken color. As you can see here, I've taken some ultramarine blue and some alizarin crimson and creating one pile of with some titanium white. So this is a main pile of color. Now this color could be anything, but in this case we're using this purplish blue. So mixing that up, and then we're going to take a scoop of that, place it to the side, another scoop, and create 2 or 3 piles outside that color. Now I'm taking the alizarin crimson here and bending that pile to the cooler red. That is alizarin crimson. So now we're not obliterating the collar, the original collar, we're just bending it. Then I'm taking some cobalt. I'm going to add some titanium here because I'm also going to use some cerulean and try to keep it the same, close to the same value. Now, so we took that purple, our original purple pile, and now we have a satellite color that is a little more on the light blue side. So then I'll take a scoop of that and then bend that to the viridian side. I'll place some viridian in here. And so now we have our mother pile and 3 variations. We don't totally change it, we just bend it. So then I'm going to take that original color and get it on the board. So, you know, you can imagine this is a sky, or say these colors are brown or something like that, so we're painting the side of a building, or if it was reddish, you're painting a barn. So then I took that pile of the alizarin that was bent with the alizarin, put it on there, but notice I didn't obliterate the color beneath it. Then I'm taking the pile that is with the cerulean and cobalt, again, just placing it in there sporadically, and taking the viridian, the pile that contains the viridian, and then you'll get this mottled look. It's very interesting, and it's a very neat way to use color. So now let's look at another technique that we use here. So let's say we stumble on a color, a dark color in this case, and we're just brushing it on, scrubbing it in, and creating variations with the strokes inside here. As you can see, this is how this could work on grass. Then we come back, say with a lighter, more marbled look. That's and just laying the brush almost flat and pulling it across, and come back with the palette knife and trowel on something over top of that. Now here I'm using like a muted green. I believe that was yellow ochre and black and some titanium white, and like placing it in here, then going back with the CAD medium and CAD light, and just placing those spots, just in this instance, with all these variations. To me, this can represent the complexity of nature, and the variation of color that you see in a landscape. It becomes very interesting and rich and completely abstract. So let's look at, so let's say, like when I was talking about the toned canvas. So we have that gray behind it. Well, then I go over. Let's say we start off with a very intense blue, light blue. Now I'm not covering it like with a roller, so you can see some of that under the toned canvas coming through. So then let's create our purplish blue, and when we go over that, and that could even be a little more on the muted side, but you don't completely cover the whole thing. You let some of that peek in behind it, and you get a very interesting variation in color. Monet had been described as the driving force behind Impressionism. Crucial to the art of the Impressionist painters was the understanding of the effects of light on the local color of objects, and the effects of the juxtaposition of colors with each other. Monet's long career as a painter was spent in the pursuit of this aim.